DEI is in the administration's crosshairs. In fact, President Donald Trump did his best to relegate the concept to the dustbins of history. An executive order abolished DEI from any federally funded program, and that was issued on day one.
So when the publication The Free Press got a tip that PBS was trying to shift around its DEI staff, reporter Josh Code approached the broadcaster, which receives 15% of its funding from the federal government. That amount calculates out to $1.40 per taxpayer.
It is worth noting that the head of DEI, Cecilia Loving, earned an annual salary of $396,240 and introduced programs such as Meditation Mondays and Indigenous Healing Circles. How loving. There are also some questions as to whether the broadcaster broke the law by hiring people according to race.
Here with us now is Josh Code to reveal what he found when he queried PBS. Hey, Josh.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Of course. So just explain, I think one of the kernels of this story is the idea that you put questions to PBS about a tip that you had received that essentially they were going to reassign these two DEI executives to staffing services or something to that effect. They were going to put them in another department. And then shortly after your inquiry, it was announced that those two DEI executives were going to leave. Is that correct?
Yes, Niall, that's correct. What had happened was I got a tip from a high-ranking PBS executive, and this person told me that at PBS, DEI had basically run rampant because the CEO loved it and the employees loved it, and that in 2024 there was a round of layoffs where 24 people lost their jobs, but the DEI budget at PBS remained largely untouched. And so this person told me that these two execs were being reassigned to station services, and that, in effect, PBS was playing a dangerous game of chicken with Donald Trump. So when I went to their comms person, I asked if this was true, and a few hours later, he told me that the DEI department had been shut down and that these people would be leaving PBS. And I thought that this timing was curious because 10 minutes later, Paula Kerger, the CEO, sent an email to the whole staff saying that these two executives, Gina Leo and Cecilia Loving, were leaving PBS.
Does this show that, we've been dealing with this so far, just reclassifying employees who were in a DEI role, just calling them something else? Is that the norm right now in the federal government, do you think, unless they're specifically called out for doing so by outlets such as your own?
I think it is the norm, Robbie, and I think we're going to see a lot more stories like this coming out across the federal government as different agencies prepare to be investigated by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. And I think that certain departments like Education and the Veterans Affairs Department, they've already placed a lot of staffers on paid leave, staffers who are concerned with DEI in their job descriptions. And that's the honest thing to do. And I think what remains to be seen is which other agencies will follow suit or which ones will only cave when the press comes to ask them questions.
Can you tell us more about what being a DEI employee at PBS actually entails? What was the actual work these two officials you paid attention to were doing for the organization?
Sure thing, Robbie. You hit the nail on the head with the Indigenous Healing Circles and the Meditation Mondays. In effect, what these people were doing was coordinating mindfulness activities for staff and being basically PR representatives for the public to show the American people that PBS was sufficiently diverse. I think that what they did for their jobs day to day was less important than what they were able to put on their website, that these people of color were in high-ranking positions and that PBS was doing its job to advance diversity. And actually, all of this started in March of 2021 when PBS and CEO Paula Kerger received an open letter from over 100 documentary filmmakers. And in effect, what this letter said was PBS relies too much on Ken Burns and white male filmmakers, and they need to do better to hire Black and brown filmmakers. And Kerger publicly responded, saying in effect that these people were right and this was a chance for PBS to do better. And they completely caved. They promised funding for diverse filmmakers. They hired these two executives who together were making over $500,000 a year. And this was all in the aftermath of George Floyd and the so-called racial reckoning. And the PBS DEI department themselves, they admit that George Floyd influenced their DEI policy. And I think they wanted to do the right thing whether or not they caved because of white guilt or because of fear of the mob, they still compromised the integrity of their newsroom. And I think the American people want answers about that.
Why is it caving, as you put it, rather than doing something that is actually useful or defensible at least? I mean, I noticed that in the article, for example, you refer, as we have here, to the Meditation Mondays. But I mean, there is actually quite a lot of study that suggests that meditation is a beneficial practice, and presumably nobody had a gun put to their head and was marched into Meditation Mondays. Another thing that you mention in your story is funding from the National Science Foundation to PBS, and you mentioned that that included $2.9 million for a kids' TV show to improve boys and girls' perceptions of female scientists. What's wrong with that?
Well, Robbie, I'm sorry, Niall, I think that it's very important to have diverse perspectives in a newsroom. And of course, it's important to have diversity. It's important to have wellness in a newsroom. But when you're a government-funded agency, there are other concerns that you need to address, which is, are people getting promoted based on race? Are people getting hired based on race? And I think that the question hanging in the air here is, did PBS break the law by hiring and promoting staffers based on race? And in 2023, they boasted, in fact, that a majority of their content and the people making it were from Black and Indigenous and people of color backgrounds. And so I think that this merits a congressional investigation, and whether or not people were highly encouraged or mandated to participate in Meditation Mondays should take a backseat to the fact that people are upset their tax dollars are being spent on these practices that erode meritocracy and erode equal opportunity.
Have you heard from any irate PBS employees that you've cost them their morning meditation circles by fixating on this?
I have not yet, but I hope that the people who left PBS can find other opportunities elsewhere to contribute in a meaningful way.
Josh Coe, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you both. Appreciate the opportunity.
Coming up next on Rising, Elon Musk was in the Oval Office yesterday. We'll tell you some of what he said and did. Stay tuned.